Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, White Plains. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon to reconnect. I think it's been almost 3 weeks, maybe a little longer, even than 3 weeks since the last time we connected. I hope that everybody is doing well. I hope that you're all healthy and enjoying the summer weather. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, hello. Oh, it's great. I'm going to give a couple of seconds for folks to log in. As in the past, we will approach this. I'll share information with you related to our reopening efforts, as well as some information regionally. And then, of course, as always, we'll have the opportunity for questions and answers. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, thanks so much. Everyone's jumping in. Thanks for taking the time. Those folks who can't jump in right now, of course, this update will stay on our Facebook timeline, and you'll have the ability to come back at any point in time. Right at the beginning, I would like to encourage anyone who is watching this after we're live, please reach out to us directly, reach out to me directly in the office. If you put a question in after we're not live anymore, it is likely that I actually won't see that question. So if, for instance, you're watching this later on this evening and we're not live and you have a question, feel free to email or contact us in the office, and we'll do our very best to answer any questions that you might have. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time. Great. I'm glad we have so many folks joining us. So when we last spoke, when we last had the opportunity to connect, it was right at the end of the academic year, just a few weeks ago. And of course, we are all watching and all watching COVID-19 and the virus and how the virus is being handled and how it's spreading and how it's not spreading. Lots of outstanding questions, of course, back there at the end of June. And unfortunately, as you know, in any type of a situation that's new, it's not necessarily accurate to say that we have any real concrete new answers. Certainly, we have new questions. But the biggest question on all of our minds right now is related to opening schools. Anybody who turns on the news or picks up a newspaper knows that this is a question that is being contemplated and a challenge that is being addressed all throughout the country. It's certainly being addressed all throughout our state, New York, and in fact, in many places throughout the world. Unfortunately, throughout the United States of America, we are seeing many states with increasing cases of COVID-19 being identified. Unfortunately, throughout the country, we're seeing that school districts are unable to be able to open up to welcome students back because of concerns related to the spread of COVID-19. Here in New York, we're in a bit of a different place, and I feel, and I'm sure you do too, that as challenging as it is, because we did take pretty decisive action back in March and continued on through it and through the pain and challenge associated with those actions in the New York pause, we have seen a flattening and so-called crushing of the curve here in New York. So we're steady. In our region, as you know, we are in phase 4. We are in a pretty steady holding pattern, a good place, low numbers of COVID-19 being identified on a daily basis, and certainly low numbers now of individuals and community members throughout the state of New York losing the battle with the virus, which is good. Of course, we came through a really difficult time, and times are not really that much easier. We understand that. We know that there are still many challenges all throughout our community and throughout the state. And as we are planning here in White Plains for reopening in September, I wanted to give you an update on where we are. I know how politically charged this conversation has become. I know how important it is that our schools are open for our children. Trust me, I know many of you who are watching right now, your parents, your teachers, your moms, your dads, your grandparents, your community members, everybody has a stake in this. Everybody wants to see our children being able to return to our classrooms in a safe and secure manner. And that, of course, all of us here as well. The Board of Education in White Plains has been extremely supportive, but just like us, they want to see our children coming back to class. The first thing that we consider when we're having this conversation and we're planning for September is the safety and well-being of our children and our faculty and staff members. We can't and we won't make decisions without keeping that first and foremost in our mind. We also understand that remote learning was a challenge, And we know that in the future, if we have to go to a fully remote setting again, that we need to make adjustments. And we did, and we learned from the end of the academic year. So we know all of those variables, and we know how challenging it has been for our community members. And we also know that many, many people have many, many opinions about what should happen in September. Those opinions are valid. Every single person's opinion is valid to them. What we have to do, and the task that we have in front of us, is take all of that information, try and synthesize it, try and distill it down, and try and incorporate it into our calculus in terms of planning. We also have to make sure that we're taking into consideration the guidelines that have been shared. And by the way, we just received them on Monday from the Department of Health in the state of New York. We are anticipating that today we'll be receiving the guidelines from the New York State Board of Regents. So for those of you who wanted schools to have a plan in place yesterday or 2 weeks ago, I totally understand. But please know that the information related to the guidance and the guidelines is only just coming out now. And before schools can truly plan to have a reopening plan in place, we have to have the guidance. So fortunately, we did receive DOH's guidance, and I'll talk a little bit about that with you this afternoon. Hopefully we get the regents today, and we'll be able to move forward with our draft plans, which need to be submitted to the state of New York by July 31st. So it's a very tight timeline. Many of you also know that the governor is going to, or has indicated that he plans to make a decision related to all schools in the state of New York in the first week in August. So a lot of moving parts. And that's every day. And we've been dealing with that since the outset of the pandemic. So I understand, and believe me, I appreciate your continued patience, your flexibility, but I know how difficult it is to kind of be in limbo and not have concrete answers related to what's going to happen at the beginning of the next academic year. I also have a message to our students. Those of you who might be watching right now or who might watch later, Tigers, we are thinking about you every single day, and we want you back. We want you back in our buildings. Your teachers want to be back in the buildings. Everybody wants the same thing, but we also know that we have to make decisions that are going to be in the best interest of everybody's health and safety. We were fortunate. Schools closed quickly, and many believe that because schools closed quickly, we didn't see a great spread among children in our region, which of course is great, and we're happy for that. We want to make sure that we continue to not see a spread in children in our region, and that's part of our planning moving forward. To our faculty and our staff members, thank you. We know how challenging this has been for you. We know that you've been asked to do things that you've never had to do, that no teacher has ever had to do in the history of public education. And you've done it, you've figured out ways, and you're continuing to figure out ways, and we're appreciative and grateful. As a teacher, I said this back when we first started. As a teacher, I've never been more proud to be a teacher, and I hope that you're proud too. I can tell you we're certainly proud of you and appreciative for all of your efforts. So as we're moving forward and we're planning and we're sharing this information with you, know that at any point in time, things can change because we're basing our decisions on the science, on the numbers, on numbers of cases in our community, on numbers of cases in our region, and making sure that we're making decisions that are grounded not just in what we want, but the challenges that we're facing right in front of us on any given day to day. All right. We know that right now, according to the guidance from the New York State Department of Health, we are not going, not just White Plains, but in our region, we are not necessarily going to be open or be able to open our schools to every single one of our children come September. You know, I think that's something that many of us thought would probably happen. We held out hope. I held out hope. I continue to be optimistic every day. But the requirement, what we know that we need to do is reduce density in order to meet the guidelines associated with the Department of Health. So we have to think about how we're going to be able to reduce density, but at the same time, get as many of our children back into our buildings as possible. So where we are planning right now, and again, nothing is set in stone. And I'm going to say that several times just because I don't want anyone jumping to conclusions. Nothing is set in stone. Where we are planning right now is for a hybridized approach to our instructional program come the fall. That can change. Certainly if we see a spike in COVID-19, we could end up in a complete or at least partial full remote environment. It could change if we see cases going down and it becomes evident and safe. We could see us coming back. It really depends on the numbers and what we're facing right now. But for our planning purposes, we recognize that the hybrid approach, getting as many children into our buildings in a face-to-face environment weekly as possible, is going to be what we're shooting for right now. Our planning committees have been in place since May, really, and have been thinking about ways in which to do this. It's only since we received the guidelines from the New York State Department of Health on Monday that we've been able to really come down and start to put things together to have a plan in place that would be workable, and that's where we are today. So in terms of fall, right now, we are thinking of a hybridized approach to education, which means that a portion of our student population will be coming to school on any given day, and others would be in a remote setting on that day. That will then flip, and the students who were remote will be coming into school to meet with their teachers, and then the same will continue on as we move forward. And again, there are guidelines that are going to be in place as we move forward for health and safety. So let's start with those first. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with you the Department of Health, and I'm not going to read this all to you, but the Department of Health guidelines that we're working off of. And you're going to be able to, if you haven't already, you're going to be able to examine them yourself too, so that you can better familiarize yourself with what we're dealing with and what school districts all around the state of New York are dealing with as well. All of this information is going to be available to you on our district's website. You're going to be able to visit our website. There's going to be an entire page devoted to reopening. You're going to be able to go through there and see all the guidance documents that we're using, explore it, and of course, if you have questions, feel free to ask them at any time. We also sent out a survey last night. Hopefully you took time to begin to complete that process. And by the way, that survey is available to everybody. It's available to parents and guardians and caregivers. It's available to students. It's available to community members. Anybody should feel comfortable filling out the survey. We want to know what you have to say. We want to know what you think. Our goal is not to make life more difficult. It's to try and make life more manageable and put a structure in place so that you can begin to be planning for the fall. We know that it's not going to be perfect. We know that there are going to continue to be challenges. We are doing our very best to approach this regionally, working in partnership with school districts in our area to the extent possible to try and formulate plans that to the extent possible will mirror each other. We hope that will be helpful to folks. So please know that. As much as I recognize there are going to be challenges, as much as I recognize that there are going to be folks who say, this isn't working for me, I understand all that, but know that we are trying to do our very best to meet the needs of as many people as we possibly can moving forward. The purpose of the Department of Health's guidelines is to be able to re-enter schools in a safe manner, to try and reduce the spread of COVID-19 among faculty, staff members, educational community members, and of course, our children. We, in the school district, are the responsible parties. I see folks talking about small numbers. Well, only a couple of kids got sick, or well, only a couple of kids, in the world or in the country have perished because of COVID-19. Yeah, I understand that, but also I promised you back at the end of the last academic year that I would never make a decision that I wouldn't want to be made for my own children. That promise still holds, and I can tell you, and I know you feel the very same way. One is too many. So we have to try and figure out a way to mitigate those risks, and we have to try and figure out a way to keep the risks to children contracting the illness as small as possible and work through it that way. Facial coverings, a hot button issue. Masks, right? Face masks, face shields, a hot button issue depending upon where you are, depending upon what your beliefs are, depending upon what your feelings are, depending upon what your comfortability with wearing a facial covering is. We understand that. But we also know, and I need to share with you so that you understand that facial coverings are part of our re-entry back into our schools. That's important. It's important for our students. It's important for our faculty and staff members and our educational community members. So masks, face masks are going to be needed. The school district will be providing face masks, but also parents and guardians are encouraged to talk to their children about wearing masks. And I know that probably every one of you has already done that. Visiting the store on any given day, we're wearing masks. So coming back into our facilities, Facial coverings are going to be required in many settings. That's important to state outright. Physical distancing. That was a big one. This is really the pivotal point on whether or not and how many students can come back into a facility at any given time. According to the Department of Health's guidance, there needs to be the 6-foot rule in terms of physical and social distancing for our children, and that means our classrooms need to be broken out that way. And that's the approach that we're going to take. The 6-foot physical distance, 6 feet all around, so you can imagine that's the change that needs to happen in our classrooms and our facilities to make sure that we're adhering to those physical distance requirements and the guidelines. Can children be physically distanced at all times during the school day? No, there's no way. That's why facial coverings, that's why face coverings are going to be an important part of the day, because in those instances where children are not able to be necessarily 6 feet apart from each other given at any point in a given day, that's when you're definitely going to be wearing your masks. So for example, according to the guidance indicates that while you should try and wear face coverings as much as possible, and certainly when you're not able to be physically distanced, that there can be times when you are physically distanced that face coverings can be relaxed. And for children, that could be, of course, eating, if they're in an instructional environment where there's nobody else around them. But then again, if you're interacting with your faculty, with your teacher, your support staff, that facial covering goes up. Don't worry, there'll be more information coming. I'm just sharing with you, drafting our thinking according to the guidelines. In terms of spaces and common spaces in our schools, trying to utilize the common spaces as much as possible so that we can create bigger rooms and bigger areas for students to meet with faculty and staff members, utilizing space to the best of our ability to reduce density and to increase the spacing among children in the buildings. In-person instruction is so important. That's our goal, to get as many children back into our buildings with our faculty and staff members as possible within the guidelines each day during the week. And that's what we're going to be pushing for, and that's what you'll see coming down in a draft plan in terms of getting as many children back in a hybrid fashion. That's not going to be every child every day. It can't. We don't have the ability to do that and still maintain the guidance. But for days that students are not in buildings for in-person instruction, remote learning will be taking place, and that remote learning will directly connect to what's happening in school. And also, there will be opportunities for children during those remote learning days to interact in other ways. In terms of cohorting, and this is keeping as many of the same children together as we possibly can during the course of the day. We're working on trying to be able to build schedules and build plans that allow that to happen. It's not going to be able to happen in every instance. As you know, as you get older and you get into a high school situation, for instance, you have electives and you have different course tracks that you're taking. We don't want to reduce the ability for our children to engage in those amazing learning opportunities. We want to try and be able to provide all of those opportunities to our children. So we also know that there are going to be times where cohorting is not going to be possible. But when we can, we will try to make that happen. That also helps if there is an instance where a student is identified as coming down with COVID-19, because if that does occur, if that does occur, we need to be able to implement a contact tracing program so that all of the children who may have, and adults who may have had contact with that individual who is identified as having COVID-19 can be systematically contacted and notified to further reduce the potential spread of the virus. Screening. This is really, really important. Parents and guardians and caregivers are the first line of defense in terms of identifying and reducing the spread of any communicable disease, not just COVID-19. So we are going to be asking and reminding, probably ad nauseum, and you'll probably get tired of it, reminding parents and guardians how important it is not only to screen your children every day, that's going to need to happen before children are sent to school, but also keeping children home who may be exhibiting any symptoms of an illness that could be related to COVID-19 or any communicable disease. That's really important. We know how conditioned we all have been to power through the sniffles, right? Or a cough or a low-grade fever. We can't do that anymore. We have to take all of those symptoms or potential symptoms very seriously and make sure that we rule out that it isn't COVID-19, or we risk spreading the illness and we risk shutting down the entire school. That's really important to remember. The steps that we take to reduce the spread of COVID-19 mean everything for our ability to remain in phase 4. If we come out of phase 4, schools are completely closed in the region. None of us wants to see that happen. We're seeing that happen nationally. When steps aren't taken to mitigate and keep the curve down and keep the spread down, unfortunately, we're not able to open schools. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So screening is going to be really important, and that's an everyday situation, right? How are you feeling today? Making sure that none of our children are being sent to school when they might be ill. That goes for us too, adults as well. Making sure that we are checking every day and screening ourselves to ensure that we are not potentially bringing a communicable illness into our buildings, which could further impact our ability to provide in-person instruction to our children. Transportation is a huge question, and transportation is something that's really important to our children. It's very important to us. We know how important it is for parents to be able to get children onto a school bus and get them to their buildings so that they can go off and do what they need to do each day. We plan on providing transportation, but it's important that we understand that right now we cannot see any way to effectively physically distance 6 feet apart on a school bus. And you know that. When you look at a school bus can hold 52, 54, 56, depending upon how big the kids are, children, right? 6 feet apart, you're coming down to 8, 10, 12, 14 kids. It's not possible. So any child who is riding a school bus to and from school, according to the guidance, is going to need to wear a face mask. That has to happen throughout the entire duration of the ride, a facial covering. And there are, again, many forms of facial coverings, and that's something that we can talk about later. But that's important to understand. We are asking, and you saw this in the question in the survey that went home yesterday, we are asking parents and guardians if they plan to take advantage of transportation via the school district, or if they're going to opt to bring their child to school on their own. That's important information for us. If parents parents and guardians are choosing to bring their children to school on their own, we will then be able to further reduce density on school buses, and we will. Any area that we can reduce density, we're going to do that. So thinking about transportation for the fall, that's important for you to consider. And again, you'll be able to go through these guidelines yourself and read it in detail. But that's the face mask, facial coverings on school buses is going to be required. Food services will be provided, as it has been, for all of our children. You'll be able to access food as you did during the shutdown. Might be in a little bit of during the pause. Might be in a little bit of a different format than it was last spring, but we will have food available. We're working very hard to make sure that we continue to have food available for our kids each day. Ventilation is going to be important. Keeping windows open, keeping doors open, moving air through our classrooms, through our facilities. So what does that mean? If it's a cool day, layers, right? If it's a warm day, again, thinking about that as well. Hygiene, cleaning, and disinfection. That is really important, and you know we have been cleaning our facilities. We had been cleaning our facilities. We're continuing to do that. We will be making sure that we're reminding our children, washing hands, keeping hands out of your face, right? All of these things we've been talking about, super important. Having hand sanitizer available, cleaning the classrooms prior to a new cohort of children coming in the next day. That's all going to be taking place. The deep cleaning that our facilities department has been doing a tremendous job with will be happening on a daily basis. If we are in a situation where it's identified that a student has, or is suspected to have, or an adult contracted COVID-19, getting out of that room, making sure we're cleaning that room appropriately, and then being able to come back. Also working in partnership with the County Department of Health, as we have been doing back in the spring. Contact tracing. Talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago, making sure that we have the ability, to the extent possible, to notify any individual who has come in contact with somebody who's been identified as contracting COVID-19, and then being able to communicate effectively with them. Contact information. I know that this is something that we do every year at the beginning of the academic year, asking you to update your contact information. This is really, really important that everybody do this. The proper phone numbers, the proper email addresses, so that we can get in contact with you in a flash if we need to. We need everybody on board with this, just like for the initial screening before sending children into school each day. We need to make sure that all of that information is available to us here at the school district so that we can contact you immediately if need be. Being able to come and pick up a sick child, is something that we're all going to have to be vigilant about moving into September and forward into the academic year. We will be looking at a tentative schedule that, and again, draft form, just sharing our thinking right now, right? None of this, everything will still need to be reviewed and everything would still need to be approved by the state, the Board of Education, but so that you understand where our thinking is. In the K-8 model, we're looking at AABB days. What does that mean? It means we take the alphabet, we're going to divide our children up, and the alphabet helps, right, because it keeps siblings together, so students will be attending school in person on the same day or in remote on the same day. To the extent possible, reducing density and making sure that those students are staying together in cohorts as much as possible. So AABB, and then Wednesday, say Wednesday, for instance, would be a fully remote day for everybody, and then moving forward in that fashion. Remote education, a lot of feedback related to remote education in the spring. We know that we need to continue to refine and have a very, very strong remote educational platform that is, to the extent possible, systematized so that students are receiving the same type of instruction depending on grade level they're in and courses that they're in. But we've gotten the feedback, we understand what the experiences were from our children, from our parents and guardians, and faculty members have been working really hard, and administrators have been working really hard to make sure that we can have the strongest remote learning platform and the strongest remote learning approach possible moving forward. There's also the possibility that because of spread, we could end up in a fully remote environment again. And that's why we want to have that very, very strong remote learning approach available. We know how important it is that students are in contact with their educator, with their teachers, with the support staff on any given day, and we want to make sure that we're moving forward and toward with that as we head into the fall. Okay, that was a lot of information. I recognize that, and there's going to be a lot more. It will be sent to you again as we solidify plans, as we move forward with our planning processes, and as we share what our final, and I'm going to call it a final draft plan because anything can change at any given time. Remember, we can do all this work, come to the first week of August and everything may change. Come to the last week of August and everything may change. And that could change positively or it could change negatively. So we have to bear in mind the fluidity of the situation. We have to bear in mind the challenges that folks are facing, and we're going to do our very, very best to support everybody to the best of our ability. So with that said, I have seen tons of questions coming in, and I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to do my best to answer all of these questions that are here right now. If I miss a question, it's not because I'm dodging you, it's because I just missed your question. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that maybe that I miss. And you can always feel free to reach out to me, but I'll do my very best right here. Okay, starting. Let's see. Sorry, it's taking a minute. There's so many, actually so many here that I don't even think I can see them all, unfortunately. Let's see. Okay. All right, I'm going to start with what I can see, with what I have. If I'm missing something, feel free to put it back in, and I'll be happy to answer it. So the first question I have here, All right, there's a lot of comments too. Comments are great, but comments are in the feed, and it's going to be harder for me to see questions if there's tons of comments. So just bear that in mind if you don't mind. Right, so you're sharing that you had one Zoom and that you need to have more. Yes, we understand and we agree, absolutely. More, like I said, a more systematized approach and interactive approach to instruction is important. Are temperatures for each student and staff members being checked as they're going into the building? No, the guidance does not require that. That is why we're asking for that initial screening. That initial screening needs to take place at home. So you're checking your child before you're sending your child to school. Faculty and staff members, employees are checking themselves before they come to work, and affirming that, and there will be an affirmation process that you'll be able to participate in digitally, so that all that information is collected each day as required. Many kids are sent to school with colds and flu and subsequently sent home after they infect others. Yes, absolutely, we can't have that. So we need that support at home. School district should provide those who are at home during the hybrid with instruction via Zoom. Yes, we agree. To the extent possible, we are going to have opportunities for children who are doing remote instruction while they're at home to engage, although it would not be feasible to think that teachers are going to be able to teach remotely and teach in person at the exact same time. It's not a real thing. So when I have 15 or 12 children in front of me and I'm working with them individually, and then I have another 15 or 12 children in a remote setting, to be able to think that you're going to move from one to the other and still be able to provide the attention and individualized instruction, that's not necessarily possible. So we're going to do our best, but remote is going to have a certain feel, and then of course in person is going to have a certain feel. Will the hybrid model? Will the district accept credits from private and other online educational platforms for high school students? It's something we're going to have to talk about. School districts don't typically accept credits from other schools, if you will, and if parents and guardians are choosing to go and seek education in other settings, those would be the settings that would be providing the credits toward graduation. So that might be something we want to talk about individually, because I'm not quite sure what you're thinking. Why not go back to neighborhood schools just for this ease with the transportation issue? Yeah, that's a great question. We actually explored that. We don't think that that would necessarily, though, be advantageous to our district or to our children at this time. Zoom classes live can work for younger kids too. Okay, thank you. Well, we have fans in our classrooms. Many of our classrooms do have fans. If you're concerned about having a fan in your classroom, please reach out to us, reach out to facilities, reach out to your principal, and that's something we can talk about. Thanks, Debbie. Will each school have a point person for contacting? Oh my goodness, they're coming in so fast I can't even. They're knocking the other ones out of my view. There was no option in the survey to say we would be willing. Will the school have a no contact temperature check? So in order to come into school, we're asking parents to make sure that parents and guardians to make sure that they're checking their children. If we have a case that we're suspecting a child might be sick, we will be able to check their temperature. To be able to check hundreds of children's temperatures coming into the building, that's probably not going to be feasible. Only if it was going to take an exorbitant amount of time for children to come into the building. Will children eat lunch in their own classroom? We're looking at ways for children to be able to eat lunch outside of the classroom. We're looking at ways for children to be able to get out of their classroom and stay within the guidelines as well. Does it make sense to have schools be zoned short term to help with transportation? No, we don't think so. Hi, good afternoon. Are we getting big fans or AC to circulate the air? No, many of our classrooms have fans. Some of our classrooms have air conditioning. All of our classrooms, all of our classrooms have windows. So we'll be doing what we can to be able to circulate air. If an incoming senior has already met all the I'm losing these questions. They're coming in so fast. I'm so sorry. We log temperature info. That's going to be digitally. That'll be done via apps. You'll be able to fill out. The job of cleaning would be much easier if different cohorts weren't coming in and out each day an hour. Let the kids. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Does that apply to middle school and high school? The AB days divided by alphabet. Again, this is what we're thinking. This is not something that's been set in stone, and yes, it would apply to middle school as well. Windows do not open correctly. Definitely let us know if you're having an issue with any of your windows in your classrooms. Will a child be given the opportunity to remote learn if they're uncomfortable? You're going to have the opportunity to reach out to us, parents, guardians. If you have a vulnerable population or if you're concerned about coming to school, reach out to us and we'll be working with parents and guardians. Will you lose specials? No, we're looking at ways to be able to incorporate specials into our children's schedule. Thank you, Ms. Brake. Your remote learning was a disaster. The high school teachers were nowhere to be found. Appreciate your comment. We are looking to be able to improve in any way that we felt or that you felt and that we learned we weren't hitting the mark. Please remember that we are all learning and we're all doing our very best to try and deliver instruction in the best possible way considering the circumstances. For working parents, will there be an option for childcare on days of remote learning? Right now, we're not sure about that. Remember, it's all about reducing density for children, so offering childcare in the facilities does not reduce the density of children, does not meet the guidelines. So we're looking at ways to be able to support parents who need childcare. I would also suggest those of us who have to go to work every day to be thinking about ways in which we might be able to deal with a remote learning environment. Again, folks, it's not just White Plains. This is nationwide. On a daily basis if our children are remote learning. What's the plan for the high school? So the high school, we would be looking at potentially splitting up the grades, trying to get as close to a cohort model and reducing the number of students that would be coming in any given day. So for instance, half of grade 9 and half of grade 11 one day, half of grade 10, half of grade 12 and another day. Yes, David, you'll get more information on the tentative schedule, or you can go back and listen to how I explained it in the first place. Thank you, Mr. Ensign. This makes no sense. So what about parent who don't bother? Don't bother what? I'm not sure what you mean there. How would the hybrid approach work for special needs children? Thank you, Cheryl. So we're trying to figure out ways in which we can help to get students with special needs and students who are in vulnerable populations in more often. We're still working that out. But we are looking and trying to support those children in a way that's going to allow so that they're not in a setting where they're not receiving instruction or support. As you know, this year, this summer, we have extended school year in person here in the district. A lot of hard work by the folks here in the district to make that happen. I was just over there today visiting with the children and the teachers, and it's great. And I'm glad that we have it. So we'll be looking at that as we move forward as well. Have you considered keeping home older children? We have. We've considered a lot of different things. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get as many children into school as possible within the guidelines. We know that for some children staying home, while others, would be able to remote learn, and even older kids, remote learn no problem. For others, that would be a real challenge. But we are, of course, considering everything. Older kids need a real education too. I agree. Oh, Mr. Eisen, sorry, Dr. Ricka, but to rely on parents to take temperatures is ridiculous. You know a lot of parents won't care to do it. I can't disagree with Mr. Eisen, and I understand that's your opinion. I have to ask parents and guardians to be responsible to screen their children. I will tell you, for us to be able to take temperatures of every single child coming in would be prohibitive in order for us to get them into the classrooms and to get learning. Imagine what it's like when you go to the airport and you stand in line at TSA. That wouldn't be productive. I'm not saying we're not going to have temperature taking for children who we think we might have an issue with. I am telling you, though, that to be able to screen 300 or 500 children coming into a building would be a challenge. Will there be anything done differently for incoming kindergarten students? Yeah, we're looking to try, again, age appropriate, right? I have a kindergartner, going to be a first grader next year. I understand, that those children definitely need more support in terms of their school day. So we're trying to figure out ways to approach that, to provide that support for the little ones as well. Yes, we're hoping to have schedules. Will the district be more flexible? The teachers wouldn't even give work when they... I understand many of you are sharing your feelings and your thoughts about the spring, and thank you for that. We are taking that feedback. That was the purpose also of the survey, and then we'll incorporate your feedback to the extent that we're able to do that into our plans moving forward. Mr. Eisen, so it's a time issue. No, I think it's a logistical issue. And again, we're going off the guidance from the Department of Health, and we're also asking parents and guardians to be partners with us in taking their children's temperatures or checking to make sure that their children are well before they're sending them to school. I'm trying to scroll back down here. Self-guided home. No, we don't want it to be self-guided homeschooling. We want to be we want to have partnership and making sure that the remote learning aspect of a hybrid model is the best it can be. Where is the school-by-school plan? Is it on the website? It's not there yet, Mr. Hodges, because we're talking about what we're thinking right now, right? Remember, we just received the guidance on Monday. We've yet to receive the Regents' guidance. That's supposed to be coming today. And then as soon as we get those draft plans together, and as soon as we get them approved, we will be sharing them with the community. We live feeds from each classroom. No, we don't think that live feeds from each classroom would necessarily be advantageous to all of our children. Is there other technology other than Zoom that would allow teachers teaching class? Yes, there is, absolutely. There is other, and we utilize other technology. We utilize Schoology, we utilize Microsoft Teams, we utilize Seesaw. I'm trying to go through all of your questions. Mr. Eisen, no temperature checking, no ventilation protocols. Yes, temperature checking, and yes, ventilation protocols. I'll tell you what, feel free to give me a ring. I'm happy to talk through with you what your thinking is so that I'm not trying to keep up with your comments back and forth. Would you schedule a regular school hours for kids who are in person that day? Yes. What would be a regular school day? How is SEL being implemented through CASEL? SEL is a major portion of what we're trying to accomplish when kids are coming back. We recognize that this entire experience has been a traumatic experience for everybody, children and adults. I recognize and understand that many of you who are on here right now have experienced a great deal of trauma since the onset of COVID-19. We are going to be working very hard to support our kids, first and foremost, in making sure that any of their social or emotional needs are met, even before we're moving into the academic questions. And that's an important part of our reentry, and you'll see that as we're moving forward. If we have a mixed household and kids fall on different sides of the alphabet, how will that be handled? Hopefully you'll reach out to us, let us know if that's the way that we in fact move in terms of our planning, and then we'll be able to do everything we can to accommodate your needs. You're welcome. You're welcome. And again, folks, I understand. I really do. I understand how challenging this is. Believe me, if I could just say, hey, listen, we're open, all of our kids are coming back, I would do it in a heartbeat. Our teachers would do it in a heartbeat. Every single measure that we're taking and every single measure that we're required to take is to try and mitigate this global emergency. And it's not easy, believe me. The only thing we've been thinking about is how do we get our kids back into school? You see it every day. So I recognize that many of you have ideas and you're thinking about these things, and all that information is great. Please share it, but also know that if we're not able to accomplish your ideas, it's not because we're not listening. It's because we're just not able to do it. And if we have to make adjustments, we'll do that. Our goal is to provide the best possible education and lower the anxiety and the stress and the strain on our parents and guardians and our households as well. Do you have any data that you can release on how many students and staff tested positive for COVID in the district from March? No, not really. I mean, we definitely know of folks who were tested positive. We don't know everybody, because once our facilities closed and once folks were out of the facilities, then the school district was not involved in the contact tracing. So while we definitely know that we have folks who had contracted COVID-19, and we still do in our community, we don't really necessarily have data that we would be able to share. Certainly reliable data. Yes, live options will be made available for lower grades in terms of being able to see synchronous or asynchronous lessons. Yes, consistency is absolutely an issue. That's right, Mr. Zion, thanks very much. Temperature checking is not necessarily the way to absolutely identify whether or not somebody has COVID-19 or any other communicable disease necessarily. And we also know that there is asymptomatic spread. To the extent we're not sure, there's conflicting science again. So, right, we're using the best information available to us at this time. Thank you. Older children definitely need to be in school. So I'm scrolling down, I'm trying to keep up, I'm so sorry. Coming back to the survey, how will the answers be? So the survey, remember, the survey, nothing is necessarily set in stone based on information that comes back in the survey. Survey is an information gathering tool. We understand it's not quantitative data. It's not a scientifically supported survey. It's just basically for you to be able to share with us your input and your thoughts so that we can take that into consideration while we're planning. So don't worry about that. Fill out the survey. If you fill out the survey once and you feel like you made a mistake and you want to fill it out again, go right ahead. Or if you have information that you want to share with us directly, please do that as well. Fall sports. Right now, according to the guidance that we received from the Department of Health, there's been no indication of anything related to fall sports. Right now, the present focus at the state level and at the county level and at the district level is on getting kids back into the classroom. As soon as sports can happen, believe me, we're going to want to have sports happen. But right now, there isn't any information related to sports ramping up in the fall. Considering many children who get COVID-19 are asymptomatic, if the cohort has to quarantine due to a positive case, will the school require negative tests to come back, be allowed to school? That information, it really, if we have to go into quarantine, parents and guardians are going to be encouraged to make sure that their children are seen by a medical professional, just like it was in the spring, and then we'll move forward from there. So kids in lower grades will have different teachers for the school year, one for onsite? No. The children they'll have their teachers, and then when they're in person, they'll be with their teachers. On the remote days, they would be working, again, in conjunction with what's happening in the classroom, but in a remote setting, not necessarily in a synchronous setting. That's important to remember. Will children entering Eastview be given iPads to facilitate remote learning? Yes, all of our children will be receiving the technology that they need. Just like we did in the spring, we're going to be doing that again in the fall. If somebody has difficulty with Wi-Fi, if somebody has difficulty with hotspots, we're poised and ready to be able to support as well. Thanks. I'm trying to answer as fast as I can. I appreciate it. And listen, I also understand your frustration, right? And again, as I said at the beginning, if you're upset and you want to project your anger and your frustration, I get that. I understand that. But know that we're doing everything that we possibly can to support all of you, every one of you, whether you're a parent or a guardian or a child, whether you're a teacher or a support staff member, whether you're a community member. We really are. We're not looking to make things more difficult. We're trying to make them better. Real testing must be required for all. Thanks, David. Again, we also live within the confines of what's required through the state of New York. Other state, yeah, I'm not quite sure what other states necessarily have done, but I do know that other states have remote learning environments that are put, that are in place at all times. For instance, states that are very spread out geographically have remote learning that's kind of in place always. That's not the case here in New York, but certainly we're looking at that right now. What are the plans for a ventilation system to make sure rooms are safe, including in winter when windows aren't open? So keeping doors open, making sure to the extent possible windows can be open, using filters and cleaning our filters and making sure that we're keeping up with that acceptable level of ventilation. How about dual language? Has the school plan to handle since they usually switch classrooms? Yep, that's going to have to be an adjustment as well. And that's a great point. Thanks, Jenny. The school day and school year is going to look different. It's going to be a slower pace. It's going to be more deliberate. There is definitely going to be more conversation related to how children are doing, how they're feeling, and adults as well. That is important to remember. It is not the same as it was in September of 2019, unfortunately. And we're going to have to contend with that as we move forward. We know that for some that's a real struggle. We know trying to even conceptualize it is a challenge. And we're respectful and sensitive to that, but it is going to look different. Thank you, Shannon. If teachers want to get paid, they need to teach one way or the other, remote learning and no grades being given. Thanks, Nicole. I understand you're frustrated, and I appreciate your frustration. I can tell you that all of us, every one of us as teachers, do want to teach. We want to make sure that we're supporting your children as best as we can. Happy to talk to you about it more and see what we can do to assist. Any data you read states that fans and AC units only spread the virus. Okay, thank you. Please add portable classrooms to all school sites to allow for greater social distancing and small self-contained groups. Thanks, David. It's a great thought. We actually had that thought too. The other piece that's important to remember for those of you who weren't part of this conversation back in the spring, and you heard Governor Cuomo talk about it a great deal. Right now, because unfortunately the HEROES Act is stalled in the Senate at the federal government level, we are facing actually all school districts across the state of New York, as well as infrastructure, are facing potentially a 20% reduction in state aid. So we're actually working in an environment right now where we also have sort of a fiscal uncertainty. As you can imagine, we need the federal government to come through for the state of New York, just like it did during any other natural disaster, and provide that support so that we're not looking at potential reductions in our ability to navigate the challenging situation that we find ourselves in. So while we're actually looking to do more right now, we also are taking an approach where we have to be really cautious and really conservative, and we don't necessarily have the ability to do things like purchase portable classrooms to extend the space for students to be able to be in classrooms. A great idea, David. Thank you. Will water fountains be closed? Thanks, Susan. Right now, there's no guidance for water fountains to be closed. Water does need to be available to children, but of course, you may, as a parent or a guardian, decide that you're going to send your child with a water bottle, or you're going to ask your child not to use a water fountain, whatever the case may be. Hand washing absolutely will be available. We're also looking at portable hand washing stations to be positioned all throughout our buildings. And hand washing has always been a big part of our children's day as well. Yes, teachers are absolutely on our reopening committee, as are community members, as are healthcare professionals, security specialists, members of the Department of Public Safety. We really tried to have a great cross-section of those who were interested in volunteering to be part of the reopening planning process. Sick days, will they be more? So yeah, sick days are absolutely going to be flexed, and no one should be worrying about perfect attendance. We need to make sure that we're taking care of health, and thank you so much, Suzanne. Health and safety first, right? So academics, you need to make up work, all those things, we can make that happen. But health and safety is primary. So sick days, if children are sick or if adults are sick, we're standing to be able to support folks in any way that we possibly can. Are you planning to hire more teachers to accommodate more smaller classes, non-traditional classes like Phys Ed? Thanks, Kristen. Unfortunately, no. We've frozen hiring right now. Again, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we are not in an uncertain fiscal situation. We've hired for the positions that we had last year, but new hires we're holding on at the moment. Is there a benchmark to meet or plan for moving beyond hybrid learning and returning to some form of full in-school learning? Yes, and unfortunately that's not within our call. We're not able to make that determination. That's a state determination for when we can go back in person completely. And right now we're operating under the guidance that came out on Monday that requires us to be in that 6 foot all the way around a person in a classroom setting. So when that's relaxed, then we would be able to move move into a scenario where we'd have more people, more students to be able to be in a building at any given time. And of course, that's going to be predicated on the numbers of COVID-19. So again, remember, when we went out of school very quickly in March, there was a very fast reduction in the number of children who've been in buildings. Unfortunately, what we have seen, at least in other states and in other countries, when there's a reintroduction of more people in these facilities, you see that numbers and cases of COVID-19 increase. So we're hopeful that that's not going to happen, but at the same time, we're watching it happen in other places. Are you thinking about an all-remote choice for staff? Will there be remote options for at-risk staff? Folks who are in a position where they are at risk are encouraged to reach out. to our Human Resources Department, and of course we've been surveying, and thanks to the WPTA for surveying our faculty and staff members to try and ascertain vulnerable populations to be able to support them to the extent possible. But no, right now we are not in the position to be able to hire just wholesale more staff members. Will each building be able to accommodate half of its student population using New York State guidelines? That's the hope. So we're working on right now. We're looking at how we'll be able to do that. Will Highland's third floor get AC? Extreme temperatures in the fall and the spring. We're not. We have AC in many of our larger common areas, air conditioning. Sorry, and we've been trying to put air conditioning in to the extent that we've been able to over the years. And so right now we have what we have, and hopefully the temperatures are not as extreme as they had been necessarily a few years ago. We agree, Gina, remote learning can and should be improved, and we're working to do that. Thank you. Extracurricular activities and clubs at the high school, hopefully we'll be able to provide for those opportunities like we did in the spring. We'll do the best that we possibly can. We know how important they are to our children, and by the way, our children picked up and ran with those opportunities. As many of you saw, we had really great virtual extracurricular activities and great products from those clubs as well. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. Will schools be able to host outdoor events like back-to-school picnics or trunk or treat? Thanks, Lucia. Right now, we don't know. Those are big congregation type of scenarios. And remember, anytime that you have, and according to the guidelines, you have to have that 6-foot spacing, and that would be a challenge, I would think, at picnics and trunk or treat. My hope is that we're in a better place when it comes time for picnics or trunk or treat around Halloween, but we'll have to see where we are. I wouldn't be telling you the truth if I knew, if I told you I knew exactly. Will there be regular testing for staff? Right now, we don't have anything in place, nor is there anything in terms of guidance related to regular testing of staff. I mean, you know this. There's not regular testing of anybody. You have to go and get tested right now. So that's just not something that's in place right at the moment. Hi, thanks, Rosie. I appreciate it. Thank you. Asynchronous, but is it the same teacher as on in-person days? Yeah, the teachers would be the same. So children would be with their teachers, whether they're in a remote setting. They still have the same schedule as when they come back into their in-person setting. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, it is a little bit insane, but we're doing our best, and we're trying to navigate a situation that, by the way, has no precedent, and also at the same time meet a lot of different needs. And there are, everybody has needs, and we're trying to do our very best to meet them. Will there be an open forum aside from Facebook Live once plans are solidified to discuss concerns and questions? So remember, we can't get together in an open forum, right? Unfortunately, where we have hundreds and hundreds of people, it's not possible right now. So we're doing our best, and Facebook's not perfect, but definitely gives us the opportunity to connect this way. And we'll continue to do it and answer questions to the best that we are. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Will parents have the option for full remote learning if they prefer it? There's always the option. Homeschooling is much different than fully remote learning. Those are options. Homeschooling, of course, is an option for parents, not always a feasible option for all parents. But we can talk about that, Denise, and certainly feel free to reach out if you have a concern. Thanks, Rebecca. Will there be contactless towel dispensers in the bath and the restrooms? So we're looking and trying to install as many hand dryers and also being able to get the automated paper towel dispensers. We also looked at automation, no-touch doors and no-touch sinks, all that stuff. And to some extent, we're doing what we can. Some of it is cost prohibitive as well, unfortunately. Hand sanitizer and all of that will be available. Schools do open. Will you be providing more security at schools, especially at the high school? We have security in all of our schools, and we plan that we'll have that security, but not necessarily more security than we've had. And remember, there'll be a reduced number of students on any given day in a hybrid model, so that's fewer children for security to be working with and supporting. What are the plans for Highlands? Extremely hot temperatures. Yeah, I know. Do our best in terms of ventilation and try to cool down his classrooms as best as we can. Uh, Will the remote days be I'm sorry, I'm trying to read these. Will remote days be synchronized? No, they'll probably be asynchronous in most remote days, although there may be contact time during those days. Um, the federal guidance had been watered down to keep. So I'm going to encourage, I know everyone has very, very strong opinions related to politics and policy. I'm going to encourage, at least on this feed, because again, it is a public feed, to try not to inject that in if at all possible. Let's kind of keep it right about what we're going to be doing for our kids here in White Plains. Again, I understand and respect everybody has a position, but just in terms of what we're trying to do here, if we can try and keep it there, that'd be great. Thanks, Solange. Doing my best. Many parents would be more at ease if their teachers take their temps before coming. If the teachers take their own temperature. Well, all of us, we all are required to take our own temperatures before coming to work every day. I get my temperature taken depending on the time of the day. It could be multiple times over here at Ed House if I need to. If you did a survey right now and people could commit to keeping their kids home to remote learn, what would allow more space for the rest of us who had to? We have a survey out right now, and there's an opportunity for parents and guardians to be able to put into that survey thoughts that aren't captured in the question. So please, if you have thoughts, put them in, and we're going to consider everything. There are a few questions about parents who do not want to send their kids back in person. Will they all have homeschool, or would there be a remote option? Right now, we don't know that we would be able to offer a two-tiered system. We're going to do our very best to accommodate everybody, but to be honest with you, we don't know that we have the ability to do it. So parents and guardians need to make, I understand and respect, need to make decisions based on what they believe is in the best interest of their children and what they're comfortable with. But those decisions also could have, other impacts that I might not necessarily be able to control. Do you expect a new principal to be in place for the high school by the start of school? Thank you very much, AF. We hope so. We're working and we're conducting a search right now, but it also is possible that we might not, and we might need to have an interim or an acting principal at that point in time to continue on with our search. But we'll do our very best and to try and find the absolute best candidate to be in the position as quickly as possible. Hi, Christine. Will there be a standard for what conditions require a building and district as a whole to go back to remote learning for a period of time? For example, does one diagnosed case shut down an entire building? There is a standard. I won't bore you going through it right now, but it isn't one case, but it is based on a percentage of students who are ill or who have contracted the virus. And that's all done in conjunction with the county and with the state. So healthcare professionals are going to be making that call, not educational professionals, which is good. We have enough calls to make, and we're happy to rely on doctors to make those calls. Who is responsible for sanitizing the buildings? Will be happening throughout the day. We all are. We're all going to be part of that process, making sure that we're all keeping our facilities clean. We have a tremendous facility staff who's been working really hard and will continue to do so to keep our buildings clean. We also have products that will help us to be able to keep classrooms cleaner for longer, and we're in every area that we can, reducing the contact space that we're able to. Hi, Stephanie, how are you? And I know that we'll be connecting, I'm sure. If they could find this out, would it be helpful? Is there anywhere near 50-50 might help? We're trying to be able to reduce the density to as close as possible to 50-50. What is the district's plan to provide teachers with Lysol and disinfectant wipes in the classroom? Our plan is to have as much sanitizer and cleaning products available as possible. Back in March, we went on just about every list to get products that we could. We are continuing to remain on those lists. We've also advocated and working with the state to have a supply chain ready to make sure that school districts are not competing with each other to be able to get those products into our buildings as quickly as possible. As you know, supply chain has been slowed down tremendously everywhere, not just here in New York. But we are actively purchasing and making sure that we're going to have as much supplies as possible. Any thoughts on whether the after-school program and the intro schools will be able to operate? We're thinking about those programs and how we might be able to provide for them. Again, that would be within the same guidelines, same framework as the Department of Health has for in-person schooling. So that would be in a reduced density, a reduced number as well. Hi, David. Consider hiring out-of-work recent college grads or assistant teachers to handle smaller groups under the guidance of the current faculty. Thanks, David. Great idea. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure how that would work. Remember, we wouldn't necessarily, if a teacher's teaching a class, that person wouldn't necessarily be able to oversee another classroom with another teacher. Also, the requirements for certification, background checks, all of those things have not necessarily been relaxed, nor do I think that necessarily you would want them to be relaxed. So again, great idea, and certainly if we're able to come up with workarounds or support or ways to support, we would be able to do that. Hi, Pharrell, could you please repeat whether teachers will be teaching the same content to cohorts A and B within the same week? Thanks for your question. Great opportunity for me also to say what I shared with you is what our thinking is, right? It's not set in stone yet. It's our thinking, and yes, there would be continuity in what's being taught. The goal would be that there would be, whether you're remote or whether you're in person, when you come in and you are in person, that would be the time within which teachers would be working with the children to firm up concepts, answer questions, all of those types of things. Remote would be what would lend itself better to that individualized learning, again with the connection, but at the same time trying to be thoughtful in what is remote versus what would be in person. Hi, Sarah. What about families that choose all remote? How would that work if not enough teachers? Is there a remote option? So again, not sure about that. We don't know that we would have the capability or the capacity to have a two-tiered system. Thanks for your question. And Liza's coming in now because I have another meeting at 1 o'clock with Senator Mayer. Sorry, Senator, I'm going to be a little bit late. I just want to make sure I answer as many questions as I can. My son takes the bus. Is there a plan for bus kids yet? Hi, Sandro. Yeah, there's guidance. I went through that at the beginning, and happy to talk to you about it, and feel free to reach out at any time. Band and chorus, our hope is to be able to have band and chorus, yes. Is there a draft plan for reducing movement? We are looking at staggered schedules. We're also looking at designated pathways through buildings. All of those types of things are being considered right now. Outside organizations like Cub Scouts, unknown at the time, at this time right now, and what we'll be able to offer to outside organizations. Can you describe what you mean by asynchronous? Asynchronous means not live. So you might see a video that's walking you through a lesson, but that's what asynchronous is. Synchronous is what we're doing right now, or actually it's not. Would be you and I connecting face to face or screen to screen, like in Zoom. Thank you for that question. I'm so sorry I didn't define that earlier. Okay, I'm going to take two more, and then I will come back. We'll do another live, and I'll be happy to answer as many questions as I can. I don't think. Oh, okay. Thanks. You don't think you should use the hand dryers at all, right? Because you're worried about spreading. We're also trying to limit the number of folks in a restroom at any given time as well. Yeah, there are a lot of questions, a lot of common themes. I'm trying to work through them on the fly. I'll do my best to be able to come back and answer them as well. Thanks, Susan. So for parents who don't have their kids, again, that's the two-tier system. Okay, here's what is the current thinking on the after-school program? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come back to all these questions, print them out, and then I am going to, we'll do another live session where I'll actually go through and try and categorize. That was a great idea, thank you. Categorize and answer those questions to the best of my ability. I'm not going to go away. There will be time to answer as many questions as possible, but I'll also tell you this. There are some questions that you're asking that there aren't really great answers to. And I'm going to be very honest and candid with you about that. Like I mentioned, I know there's a lot of frustration. I know that there's a lot of people who have, all of us, we have ideas of what would work best for our children or our households. The challenge for us is to try, as teachers, is to try and come down to a place that best serves the needs of as many people as we possibly can and does the best job of educating our children during this period of time. COVID-19 didn't go away. We're fortunate in New York that we have been able to kind of flatten everything, and we're kind of in a hold steady pattern, and we want to try and stay there. And at the same time, we recognize that it's posing a lot of challenges for people, all of us, you know, as I sit here, as you sit there. So thanks again for your patience, for your understanding. I am happy to hear any of your frustrations. I'm and do what I can to support you. And that goes for community members, parents, guardians, teachers, administrators. We'll do our very best. So thank you for joining me today. I will be back. We'll do this again. We'll do it as many times as we need to do it. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that you've done, everything that you're going to continue to do, and we will get through this together. We absolutely will. Our children will be in great shape. We will support them. We'll support everybody in our community as we always do. Thank you again for your time today. I'm going to come back to you on another day with your questions, and I'll have answers for you. And feel free to reach out to us at any time, as always. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay WP proud. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.